live here at OutServe in Las Vegas, Nevada, with local log cabin Republicans and the national leader of the log cabin Republicans. Hello, Clark. Can you please introduce everyone?
Surely. So happy to introduce, to my right, I've got Michael Sorrell, who's on the National Board of Directors for Log Cabin Republicans. He's also the first openly gay regent for the Republican National Committee. To his right is Ruben Sanchez. He is in our Chicago chapter, and he's the communications officer there. Like me, he's also fellow Army, HUA. And then to Ruben's right is Chuck Venegi. He's the president of Log Cabin Republicans here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, it's important because we actually were a big part of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And also, a number of Log Cabin Republicans are either prior service. Michael here is a retired Navy veteran. And as I mentioned, Ruben and I are currently serving in the Army. Look, you know, the military leans conservative, so it's no surprise that a number of Log Cabin Republicans themselves are current or former service members. And repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was part of our mission statement, and moving toward an open service where morale, readiness, and welfare is addressed in a post-repeal environment is also important to us.
Well, as Clark has said, I'm a retired Navy veteran, and my war was 25 years ago. And I'm so proud and so impressed by the young people today that who have endured this silly policy of Don't Ask, Don't Tell for so long. But in my day, things were a little more preemptive, and we could have had an industrial accident.
I think it's important for me to let people know that the gay service members in our armed forces, we come in all shapes and sizes and colors, and just because you happen to be gay does not mean you're a leftist, and if just because you're a military veteran does not necessarily mean you're on the right. Thankfully, I'm proud to be a conservative and a gay member of the armed forces. Cool.
As the president of the Log Cabin Republicans here in Nevada, I'm very much supportive of a more conservative, more LGBT Nevada. And I think the three things that really matter a lot in Nevada that affects us all is repealing this Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was fantastic, and also our own Edna and DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act, and the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. Luckily, we have that here in our state, but I'd like to see it be more fulfilled throughout the United States on a national level.
Well, sure. Part of Log Cabin's education with members of Congress and in state houses across the country has been identifying that we are them, that we are part of the conservative community, part of the conservative dialogue. Frankly, no offense to other organizations, but if there's going to be any headway amongst fellow conservatives, it's us. It is the gay conservatives, the lesbian conservatives that can actually sit down with our brothers and sisters in the broader conservative movement and say, look, we can agree on any particular issues, be it economic issues, be it school issues, education issues. There are a whole set of corollaries that we can relate to. However, we also can say we're your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors, your co-workers, and we do that best.
Well, my whole focus has always been on business and dealing with business people, and most of them are of my generation, and they have a whole range of ingrained biases that they've held for 40 and 50 years, and if we can overcome those, if we can show them that the young people today are the same young people that we were 40 years ago, and the world has changed, and the world is going to become a better place with our continued integration.
What's important for me is to let our fellow soldiers know that regardless of what your sexual preference is, that is not a proxy for your morals, your values, or anything you hold important as far as political philosophy goes. So we can act just like everybody else and have our sexual preference not really mean anything except with whom we choose to engage in sexual relations with.
The world and the United States need to move closer to a equality nation, equality world, and I think all the barriers need to come down between whether someone's gay, whether someone's lesbian, whether someone's transgender or bisexual, and that's what I think should be a major focus in not only the United States but in the world as a whole.
As Michael said, we do take an integrationist approach about all this, and that is why it's so important that Log Cabin has a presence not only in the Republican National Committee but in our communities writ large, because it's much harder for someone to work against you if they know you, if they're your friend, if they know you from church, if they know you from the office, if they know you from the neighbor across the fence. Sure. Well, Haley Barbour, former chairman of the Republican Party, has said very recently that purity is the enemy of victory. Now, what he was referring to was actually folks like Log Cabin, that we have a role in the broader conservative movement. But it's also applicable amongst those who are involved in the gay rights, the equality movements, in that purity is the enemy of victory. And what I mean by that is there are organizations that don't believe that conservatives like ourselves have a role in securing the freedoms for all Americans. You can't do it without us, and that's the bottom line. Republican support is necessary, or else measures wouldn't be passed in Congress or in state houses across the country.
One of the reasons that I joined the Regency program of the Republican Party was because I wanted to see us in the middle of the party. I don't believe in the extremes on any issue on any side, because none of that ever equates to accomplishment. Nothing ever gets done sitting out on the end of the branches. The branches break off. What you want to do is you want to be in the middle of the party. You have so that everybody can see you. Everybody has something. They know you, as Clark has said. They know you. They've seen you. They can't really hate you. They have to kind of listen to you. And the more you talk, and the more you try to get your message across, the more accepting they become.
One way we can unite both parties is to reject this identity politics and say that whatever is beneficial for either political party is economic freedom, and we need to make government smaller so that all of us, regardless of our political persuasions, can enjoy the American dream, which is economic freedom.
I think in the United States there's too much of a correlation between being an LGBT individual and being Democrat, and I think that your political affiliation really has very little to do with your sexual orientation or your gendered identity, and that's why I think whether you're LGBT or T, you should be Republican and be able to, be proud of that. There's a thing of what I call the Republican closet that a lot of LGBT people are in. The Republicans, they keep quiet about it because they get ostracized from their own people. So
it's easier to come out gay in some circles than it is to come out as Republican.
Absolutely.
Right.
As my friend said back in 2004, being conservative is the new gay.
Exactly. I mean, there were some West Point cadets here today that came up to me after one of the panels and said, "Hey, sir, I'm a Republican," and I thought, wow, here we are. They can be openly gay as a cadet at West Point, but they were worried about identifying themselves as a Republican here at this conference.
Thank you, guys.